Hi, I'm Don Mooers, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. In April, many people's thoughts turned to money, and that's no different for the Beacon. This month's Beacon features a number of fascinating stories involving investment and money. Stuart Rosenthal, editor and publisher of the Beacon, is here to report. The Green Road Project at Walter Reed uses alternative medicine to deal with problems related to PTSD and brain injury in returning veterans. Dr. Frederick Foote, who developed this new approach, is here to explain. Our search for a new superintendent of Montgomery County Public Schools system is fast progressing. Almost, we're hoping we're going to get a candidate real soon. Jane DeWinter, who is here on a regular basis on education issues, she's going to tell us where we are in the process. Many nonprofits in our county profit, well, I don't know if a profit is quite the word for it, from projects, programs, grants from the county that enhance their budgets. Elaine Apter from the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County will tell us about the local study that Montgomery County's League of Women Voters have done about who gets this money and grants towards our nonprofits. Stuart Rosenthal, welcome back. Let's talk about money.
Yes, tech stocks. You know, it's been 15 years since the dot-com bust, and people are still apparently a little bit unconcerned about whether they should buy technology stocks. But we have an article explaining from a number of analysts why this is actually a much better time to invest in tech companies than at least the bigger and more established tech companies.
The Rosenthal report, why?
Yes, well, for one thing, these companies today are actually making money. They're not just being valued because of the number of eyeballs that they have seeing their websites. There was this exuberance before where there was huge valuation put upon companies that had no profits that were actually losing
potential,
a fortune.
I think, was what was talked about.
Yes,
potential,
but now they're actually making money, so they actually are profitable. That's
okay.
The most important thing. Secondly, it used to be that the companies would put all of their money back into the companies, which is not necessarily a bad idea. But now they've actually started paying dividends, and in fact, surprisingly, the tech sector has the most dividend-paying stocks of any sector in the stock market.
That is shocking.
It is.
Because I remember listening to these folks that that was so old school, the dividends. Right. That was so brick and mortar. That's not what we want to do.
But now they have to attract stockholders, so that's really, it's working a lot. Okay. So there are a number of things that are different about this time around, and the article discusses those, and so it's one of the things to suggest.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
So I was that a lot of the tech stocks, I mean, it's still risky for startups because a lot of them do well and a lot of them go.
Right, that's why I said
so
established.
it's really like having a wide range probably, unless you're investing in something that's
right. You want something that's somewhat established, has a proven track record, it's making some money, paying dividends.
Well, but let's continue on that thing. The established, great identity and reputation is your website. So what's your website for people who want to tune in on?
It's thebeaconnewspapers.com, S at the end of newspapers. And you can not only read our paper online, but you can get links to lots of other useful information. And of course, there's comics and jokes and puzzles and all kinds of other nice things.
Okay.
Do you have any thought about domestic, like U.S. tech companies versus international?
Well, again, I'm not an analyst myself. I'm just reporting on the story that we have, and it doesn't address international versus domestic.
But you also want to make sure there is a balance, that money is going into new innovative things, because you don't want a company that's just sitting on their laurels and not moving with the times. So I think that's something you have to watch too.
And I spoke about a company a couple of months ago in China, a Chinese company, a big one, that was really, there were some shady questions about Chinese companies, so you do have to be careful before you invest in some overseas markets, because they're not always regulated the way ours are.
Well, your volume this month, like every one of your papers, I call it a volume because it's so thick, it's so full of great news. Tell me some other articles.
One of the reasons it's thick is that we have our housing and home care options section in April. It's become now a quarterly section of the paper pull out.
Okay.
And this is for people who want to stay in their homes and age in place, or for people who want to sell their homes and downsize, or move to a retirement community. So we have articles on all those subjects, on how to sell your house, how to bring in home care, how to select a retirement community, where to retire for the lowest taxes in other states, all kinds of things. So it's a fun section, and it's got a lot of good stuff. And you can pull it out and keep it, and you can also fill out the reply card and get information from all of our advertisers, and even enter for tickets to Wolf Trap. So
It wouldn't be the Beacon if there weren't a health issue or two coming in, health story. So
Okay.
give us a health story.
Oh, well, we have loads of very interesting health stories. Now, what are they? You caught me off guard.
I'm sorry.
for a second.
Okay, more on money.
Oh, I can tell you about the travel section.
Okay.
We have 2 cruise stories. An article about the QM2, the Queen Mary 2,
Right.
which is the last ship that's doing that old-fashioned crossing the Atlantic going to Southampton. And another article about all the crazy new cruise boats that are coming up and what they're doing, bumper cars and all kinds of crazy things aboard. So it's a lot of things. If you'll take your grandkids, it's a great time
Is
to
there
go on
really
a
a
cruise.
difference between who is continuing to sail on something like the QM2?
They're trying
such as
to
troglodytes?
They're
or
trying
are
to
there
attract. They're trying to attract younger people. Well, it's very expensive to use the internet on a cruise. It's very costly.
okay.
But they have now packages, some of them, where they include that certain number of minutes with your room. So that is an issue for those of us who are
It's
hooked on
definite-
computers.
Right, right.
But shouldn't you be on a cruise ship? Shouldn't you be escaping all of that as much as possible?
It's
I mean,
hard,
Well, yeah,
It's a
I
9-day
think it's-
crossing, I think. 8 or 9 days.
Right,
It's a long time.
and it's interesting because they're going both ways. Some cruise ships are getting gigantic, and others are catering to much smaller and a more quiet ideas. So you've got both sides.
I'm hoping, Stuart, that these cruise companies are ensuring that you and your wife go out and test them.
I wish.
So that not for your own purposes. I mean, because you'd be working
No,
the
of
whole
course
time.
not.
Just
Yeah.
No.
testing that. The
Someone's
testing.
got to do it. It's a tough job.
Right.
but
Yeah.
Now, one of these Viking River cruises
I have never
up
been on a
through
cruise,
the
I
Rhine.
have to say. Never
Yeah.
been on
Oh,
The
Oh,
Atlantic
you're-
cruises, the Atlantic crossing is really wonderful.
You've
Beautiful
been on that?
for the weather, for the sea, and for the stars.
Yeah.
I've done it a lot of times in the Navy and as a civilian.
I was just going to
Yeah,
say, so
that's
join the
true.
Navy. Steve.
Well, you can afford it. It's a great way to travel.
Give a preview real quick of what's going to be coming up. We got about 2 seconds coming up in future beacons.
Well, I mentioned ahead of time there's going to be the 50 Plus Employment Expo at 1st of June. So our next issue is going to have a section on that. So for older people who want to get back into the workforce, learn how to do a good resume, learn how to interview, all those kinds of things, that'll be in our next issue. In
For
May.
us older people.
Yeah.
I hate that. Over 50 and I'm old.
It's good.
It's
It's
good.
good.
It's feeling,
Lots
I'm feeling
of good
I'm
things.
empowering. Stuart, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fred Foote, welcome. I think this is your first time on the show.
Sure is. Thank you very much, Don.
Great to see you. So tell us about the Green Road Project.
Well, first I got to say up front, I do not work for the government. I am not a spokesman for the government, but I do holistic medicine at Walter Reed, and many of our troops have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We've learned at Walter Reed that pills and surgery are not what is most healing for PTSD. What's healing is making art, making nature, and making art, making music, and being in nature. We have big programs for both, the arts program and the Green Road Project, both of which are supported by the public.
Okay. So tell us what the Green Road sounds to me like. I mean, it could be like I know the Yellow Brick Road.
Okay, and pretty close.
okay.
The Green Road is the nation's largest healing garden. We will finish it in this year. It is a half a mile long and has a 2-acre central woodland garden, and it's combined between a philanthropy project and a Navy project inside Walter Reed.
Okay, now there's a website, I believe, where people can learn more about
Yes, sir,
this.
and everything I'm telling you today, all the programs you can learn about it at medicagainstbomb.com. Like, I'm a medic, I don't like bombs, right? So my website for this is medicagainstbomb.com.
Tell me a little bit more. I mean, we all garden in our own ways. What makes this special? And that's a long garden.
Well, there's a lot of evidence that
And where is this, by the way?
it's at Walter Reed. It's inside the wire, although
okay.
we are coming out with many green roads and projects in the community that your viewers may be interested in.
Okay.
But there's a lot of evidence that just being in nature is very healing to people, okay?
Sure.
And on that basis, we are finding that it heals PTSD, just to be in nature and work in nature. And if you have a veteran that has PTSD in your community, get them free art lessons, free music lessons, or making a garden that will heal them.
Are there any analogous programs for other cohorts of people who typically suffer from PTSD, like people who have undergone torture or
Yes, ma'am.
or either victims of violence?
There are, and here in Maryland, there's a great garden foundation, TKF, that is more than 100 community gardens for people in prisons, for people in bad areas or economically deprived areas. And they gave us $1 million grant to do the Green Road. So we got great support from them, and this helps all kinds of stressed populations.
Can I ask you, is it just the idea that a person needs a balanced life? I mean, that applies to everybody, right?
We think that it directly heals the body by changing body systems such as the stress response.
Do you rely mostly on volunteers, or do you have some kind of?
Well, we got a ton of partners to do the Green Road, and we also have attached research. See, we need to prove by science that nature and art heals the body. So we have engaged Harvard Medical School, the NIH, our own USIS University, and other academics to provide very advanced research methods, including genetics, language analysis, and stress system analysis. And with this, we're going to prove within 2 years that nature and art heals the body.
So can I ask, so, you know, people go to there's other public gardens, whatever. What, if somebody came on, you know, a Green Road garden, would it look any different? Would it be any different?
Any kind of nature will work, but
Okay.
it leads me to reply that we're taking the Green Road outside Walter Reed wire now. And just this week, we have started the...
Just to make sense, there's no wire around Walter Reed. It's a
fence.
It's a big...
It's a
that's right.
fence, fair enough.
Iron.
To me, it looks like wire.
Wrought
I
iron
hate
fence.
that fence. I want people to be able to come
I
in,
agree.
but it's how it is.
Used to be a golf course.
The challenge is we're doing this for the troops at Walter Reed. What about the veterans in the communities?
Sure.
So as I go seeking support for the Green Road, everyone says, show us how to do it here. So these projects for giving free art and music lessons and building gardens in all communities of Maryland just is springing up basically wherever I go. And we have created the Maryland Network of Arts and Gardens for Veterans, which will tie them all together statewide. And the Institute for Integrative Health, where I work in Baltimore, is hiring a state coordinator to administer this network. We'll spread it across Maryland, and we will impact PTSD and veteran suicides across Maryland. And folks, we do need help, so please do contact me via Medic Against Bomb in order to pitch in with this Maryland network.
So if I want to do an art project or something, do I contact you?
I would tell you, get your artists together in your local community and make a program to give free art and music lessons to your local veterans. Get your gardeners together in your local community, get them to build a garden with the local veterans. Your own community, put your arms around your own veterans and take care of your own, and you can know that you will be healing those veterans better that way than any doctor or any pills or surgery could do.
Wow. That's very strong. We got only about 15 seconds left.
Just want to say that one of the most amazing things is that poetry is driving all this. I'm a poet in my night job. I write poems about wounded soldiers. And when I go to get support for these programs, people don't know about the military. If I read 5 minutes of poetry on them, they come right over to our side.
That's great. Well, what a wonderful story.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And before we break, I just want to remind everybody, April 22nd is a day in the life of Montgomery County. Tune in to my mcmedia.org about making all those submissions, April 22nd. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Jane DeWinter, it's always great to see you.
Thank you.
And our show is much better when you're on. So let's talk education. Right now, the sort of the question is, who will be our next superintendent? So are you ready to reveal the name of the lucky person?
No, I'm not. But I do. 2 weeks ago, the consultant group who had been hired by the Board of Education to conduct the search for the superintendent released its report after having a lot of interviews and focus groups and having an online survey. So the report outlines what are the most important characteristics that the district is looking for in a superintendent.
What are we looking for? Because in Montgomery County, it's often been said that you get 2 people together and you have at least 5 opinions.
Exactly. Well, there are, if you read the whole report, it is divided by, okay, what does the board looking for, what is the community looking for, what are parents looking for, et cetera. And I think one of the most important things, and you can even see all the individual comments that members of those groups made. Right. I think one of the most important things is somebody who does believe in, every child can learn, and that we need to close this achievement gap, and we need to meet the needs of the whole child, but who can turn that, into more than just a good feeling and kumbaya, and can actually tell people working in the schools, this is what you need to do to make that happen. And I think that need coming out of the report is reflective of what people thought was lacking.
So a little bit, I mean, that certainly was not something that was lacking in not the last superintendent, but the superintendent before. He was very good about telling folks what to do.
He was very good at telling people what to do, exactly.
Right. And so we've done that. So and his first years were extremely popular, but it seemed to tail off. Is there a concern that we're going to? I mean, is this a cyclical thing that we get an action-based person?
I don't think it's so much like that. I mean, somebody said to me that one of the things that this whole, Dr. Weiss followed by Dr. Starr is a lesson in don't ever take the job right after somebody who's been a larger than life character, and that's kind of a common thing. So, that's natural to compare. But I think that a lot of it was really some issues just with Dr. Starr's background. I mean, I think most people liked him. Most people thought that he really had put his finger on, what kids needed for, he talked a lot about social emotional health and really wanting to address the whole child. That really resonated. But he had not ever been a principal, and there was a lot of feeling that showed.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the main things that in watching school districts is there seems to be quite a turnover in superintendents. They're not lasting that long where they are, and then they don't get the time to really put in the program that they want. So is this something that they're looking at, that this person hopefully has a long-range program and we're going to stick with
Well,
it?
I think people would like to avoid, a lot of turnover. The average length of time for a superintendent is less than 4 years now. So actually Dr. Starr was sort of right, his tenure was kind of right on the money. Right. But I think one of the reasons why he was let go was sort of the realization that even though he kind of maybe knew where we wanted to go, didn't know how to get there, and so.
Jane, what do you think about the issue of the humanities versus math and science in education? Where should our emphasis lie?
I think that there's a balance between both. I mean, one of the things that I've seen a lot of studies that if you look at really what the average person needs to know, and even if you want to take the average person as like the average person in Montgomery County that graduated from college, most people do actually get enough math to get through life, but reading and writing skills are what actually are falling, a lot of people who graduated from college still can't assemble their IKEA furniture, even if it wasn't because it got translated badly from some other language. There is a lot of things that, the drop-off in no longer teaching reading once you finish 6th grade is a negative. So I think that's important, even though STEM
Right.
is,
and the arts, of course, and social science. My idea always is you have to live in this world with everybody. I'd rather have you knowing a lot about it if you're not going to be a scientist or something than knowing advanced algebra and then not knowing where Afghanistan is.
We've got just one final word. We have about 10 seconds.
Right. Well, I was going to say that the report is on the school system's website. You go there and you can read all about it. I think a couple of comments were interesting. One comment that one member of the Board of Education said was they're looking for somebody who doesn't always need to prove that they're the smartest person in the room. I think that was pretty telling.
Well, luckily, we don't need to know. Nobody needs to prove that because, Jane, you are always the smartest person in our show. Thank you, Jane. Look forward to having you back. Elaine.
Hi there.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So, yet again, the League of Women Voters has looked at an issue, a key segment of Montgomery County.
Right.
And you all are ready to come out with a report.
Yes, we just released our study on county grants to nonprofits. We had been looking at the budget process of the school district and of the county, and we realized that a large part of the county is nonprofits. And how do they get their funding? And of course, one of the biggest is the block grants from the U.S. government. And then there are other things like the Arts and Humanities Council. But the two main from the county itself would be the Executive County Collaboration grant, which is through the executive branch.
Right.
And then we have the county council grants, which are through the county. And
you know, one of the things that people have spoken about through the years is that our nonprofit community is actually kind of, there's a lot out there, but it's not as developed as much as it otherwise could be, because the county comes in and spends so much money supporting nonprofits to extend the county's work. Is that, did you find some validity to that?
That's an interesting, what we did find basically was that the county is funding a lot, but it's just one-year grants. And one of the things that they ask, and this really becomes very important to me anyway, is how are you going to extend what you're doing? In other words, are you going to come back to the county year after year, and that's going to be how you're going to fund? Or are you going to look for other monies, other way, you know, in other places? So that's an important one, and that's an interesting balance. I was on the block grant in Los Angeles, and one of the things we had is, say a nursery school started up and it was a need and it was wonderful, okay? And you funded it. And they'll come back every year to fund it, but you've got 3 all of a sudden other nursery schools, maybe in a Latino community.
How do you wean it
How
off
do
of
you
the,
wean one off so
right.
that you can get the others? And that's a very important balance. But the process is interesting, and there's
Okay.
a one-stop shop now, so they've really solidified it, and you can go to the county website or.
Well, let's open this up for some questions, because I'm sure there are
some new features that were added this year in terms of you had to, in your application, the applications are due January 13th, and you put it all in online, that you had to specify what your outcomes goals were going to be, and then people who get county grants have to turn in interim reports and a final report on their outcomes. And so that is going to become, I mean, you always had to turn something in saying what you did with the money, et cetera.
But it's
now
much
it's gonna
more
be part of-
sophisticated.
Exactly.
Yes, they've really.
Elaine, how do we get salaries up in nonprofits compared to businesses so that we can get the best people?
That goes back to your funding. If you can get the funding, then you can possibly get the salaries up. But it's interesting in that philosophy that a nonprofit, quotes, is nonprofit. So you're going to work on the minimum, and you really, the major thing is to get to the community and the service. And that's one thing in the county. You can be, your headquarters can be somewhere else, but you have to serve the people in the county themselves.
Are there any particular sectors, like I'm thinking with Stuart here, of senior citizens? Is there in the way that we divvy up the support of the
not
nonprofit sector?
really.
Is there,
There are always a few
You
among
can
the
do-
grantees.
yes.
You know,
And you can do as many grants as you want for the amount of money
but
that
who are the
you
beneficiaries? Who are
want.
the chief beneficiaries if there's a sector in this? Is there?
the
did you look
larger
at that?
Well, health
nonprofits,
and
right?
human
Yes,
services, really.
usually.
Yeah.
The ones who already do government contract work and are already doing things,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's a little odd because, not odd, but I mean, they have a little extra money and they divvy it up so that everybody gets a little bit of a taste every now and then for these one-time projects. It's not a waste by any means, but it's not a long-term vision
And
about how this
that's-
continues. That's always been
one
the
of
problem.
the interesting things. But the average or over the average is about $50,000
10
a
seconds.
grant.
Final
So-
words, Elaine. 10
right.
seconds.
So most of your people have grants here or nonprofits, and the county is one way to maybe help you out and continue your program.
Okay. I appreciate that. That's our final word.
Yeah.
And it's always great to end on nonprofits. Love nonprofits. I want to thank you all for being here with me, and I want to thank all of you in the viewing audience for being with us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time.